Hey everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis. Now given that I talked about animation last week, I wanted to talk about something this week that is in the fine arts realm. One of my favorite artists is Alex Kanevsky. His work with human characters are incredible, and that's something I really want to analyze because I feel like he has some of the best fleshiness to his work, so to say. Of course, a lot of stuff I can't show because of I don't want to get censored here on YouTube. But this is the closest I can get with, especially with a censor on top of her you-know-what. So, 3 things I want to talk about this time around. Of course, I want to talk about his use of skin tone, I want to talk about color variety, and I also want to talk about lighting. Because all 3 of those really push the edge for his figures and really create that fleshy feeling. So first, let's get a very brief talk on skin tone. So skin tone. Quite simply, most people starting out completely misunderstand it because of the type of tutorials out there on DeviantArt and otherwise when it comes to skin tone. Make no mistake about it. There is only one rule when it comes to skin tone. I'm going to type it out here. Right here. Skin tone is relative, just like any other color. You cannot have a universal skin tone because skin tone adjusts based on what the environment is. I know I've studied animation, previously, and anime styles again in other videos as well, cartoon styles. All of them have one thing in common. They also adjust their skin tone based on what the environment is. I know it might be said differently in online tutorials and such. There is no such thing as a universal skin tone. At best, there is a skin tone that you can adjust based on mixing colors from the environment around it in order to create a more realistic look. So in fine arts, this is especially true. Even though it is true in every other media that does it right. So in this case, in this particular painting, we notice that this is a very white background, it's glowing, and obviously in the back, and as such, the skin tones have to adjust on the fact that the background is so bright. Value, hue, and saturation all have to have some sort of this brightness in order for the skin tone to read properly. So notice how it's so washed out. If we were to take the skin tone, look at that. I'm going to even put it separately on the side here. It's very washed out. It's perfectly, it's just at the right saturation for the audience to know that it is skin tone without overblowing it. And we can, again, alright, I'm going to make this even more obvious. If I were to increase the saturation here and paint over it, notice how it immediately looks wrong. And of course, I'm not doing this in a very elegant way, but you get the point. There is a threshold of when your skin tone, or any other color for that matter, when it stops being believable. One approach that I like to go about it is sort of like the idea of painting out of the mist. So this is a concept that means you're basically, it's sort of like coming out of the fog. You're not putting insane saturation early on. You're not putting insane values early on. You want to build towards it. It's sort of like, again, walking out of fog. When you're in the fog, you are part of the fog. Someone looking farther away probably will look at basically your silhouette that is very, very diluted. So you probably might know. Let's just hypothetically talk about, hey, maybe you are walking out of the fog. This is what you might look like. But as you come out of the fog, that's when more colors, more values start appearing. No, I'm not. I'm gonna sort of butcher this, but bear with me. Let's just say you're wearing a shirt here. Okay, you get the point. So basically, when you're painting out the mist, you are starting off based on the background environment. So let's say you're starting out this painting, you'll probably just start out something like this. Then you're thinking, okay, that's not enough. Maybe I'll need to paint a bit more. And that's when you start layering your paint in order to create this sort of feeling. You never want to start really harshly with colors, because that will cause you to have no room to fix things. You are really locking yourself in when it comes to color relativity. So skin tone, again, insanely important to take into account what your environment is. Now, you might also think, why didn't Kanevsky use the red as relative to the skin? Well, quite simply, it's because the red needs to look like red. If I were to oversaturate the skin, then you are taking away from the red itself. Again, this looks really crude, but something like this even. It looks sort of okay, but it's still taking away from the redness of the red cloth. And Kanevsky clearly wanted to really pop out the cloth on the side. Again, colors are relative. Why have red skin with red cloth when you can have a more diluted skin in order to sell the feeling of skin and the red cloth, if that makes sense? Everything with color is relative, and you really have to take into account your environment and what you are trying to portray. Never, ever, for the sake of your art, go with universal skin color. It doesn't work. It never works. I don't care if you are watching Steven Universe. I don't care if you're watching anime. The best designs on any medium will always have a relative skin tone. Anyways, let's look into number 2. Color variety. So the other way of creating complexity and the feeling of flush is to have color variety. Similar to the idea that there is no universal skin tone, there are so many colors going on when it comes to skin. It's not just, oh, I'm going to take, let's say a peachy color. I'm just gonna, for the sake of argument, oh, it's a peachy color. I guess that's a skin tone, and then with a bit of shade, I'm gonna maybe just change the variety. All right, I'm done. There is no such thing as skin that looks that clean. Our skins have a lot of veins. Light pierces through our skin, which reflects off the veins, reflects off other organs as well. It creates a lot of tones and a lot of different varieties of colors. So where are we going to look at this here? Very simply, one of the most prominent areas in this painting with this type of idea is around this person's face. Now, notice how even though it's one value, if we were to grayscale this entire piece, notice how this area right here, very unanimous, right? The values are very closely related. I'm sure there's a lot of nuances, but no, it's pretty similar in value. But the moment I take that off, look how many different skin tones there are. Right off the bat, I'm going to just color pick all different ones here, just for a more obvious look into it. I need a new layer here. That took me 2 seconds to pick out. And notice already there is basically a gradient of skin tones, color variety there. This is another argument against the idea of just a universal skin tone. You want to have a lot of different varieties of colors when it comes to skin, or anything for that matter. Again, our skin is very complex. It's not that easy to capture, but if you want to have a rule of thumb, look into just slightly giving variations to the saturation of the color. So even if you notice here, this is 10%, this was 31%. So within just a few inches of her skin, there is a major difference in saturation. So really, just even if you're doing it chaotically, just have that variety. That will bring out your work much more than if you were just to have a stagnant skin tone. Now, of course, as I said, other objects, good rule of thumb, have a bit of color variety as well. So even the red cloth is a lot of complexities going on. As you can see, there's a bit of a grayish variation of the red. Even though it still reads as red, there is a range of saturation, there is a range of hues that really push towards it, towards giving a bit of complexity to the work. And one more thing as well, I'm going to be leading on towards the idea of lighting for my third point. Notice how there's a bit of green here. Yep, it is green, just making sure. This green is another way of creating variety, just to have a little bit of texture in your piece. You don't, again, want to have just one hue uniform throughout the entire object. You want to have a lot of things going on to create that idea of complexity that real life has. And one more thing, the hand here, beautifully well done, beautiful. Now, lighting. So, lighting, I won't go over too much because I will be overlapping with other videos, but I want to go back to this green here. In fact, there's a blue here too on the left side. Why did Kanevsky put these colors in the predominantly red hued piece? The feeling of light is white light is not just white. So anybody who has studied the RGB spectrum, the red, green, and blue light spectrum, will know that white light is basically a combination of all of them. Red, green, and blue mixed together. Now, it would be very boring for us artists to just create white light by using white. We want a bit more variety. We don't just want to have a uniform throughout the entire piece when it comes to fine arts. So what Kanevsky does is give hints, little hints of blue, little hints of green, where the light is shining on the red cloth. And that creates that artificial feeling of light, the RGB spectrum. Now, even if you were to take a very close look, I'm not sure the video will pick up on it, the top of the composition is a red, a little slight red, and the bottom of the composition, the white here, is a bit of blues in it. There's a very subtle difference. Look at this. It's not just white. He's not just using white. He's using a lot of hues mixed together to create the illusion of white. And that's where the feeling of light comes from. Again, if you are having trouble with this, try to just force yourself to add a bit of color variety to any uniform hue that you might have in your painting. Even if you know it's random, you don't know what you're doing, just vary your saturations a bit, vary your hues a bit, and you'll create that sort of raw feeling that you might not have if you were just doing one tone throughout. I hope that makes sense. There's a lot more to say about Alex Kanevsky's work, and I'll probably be looking into his work in the future videos as well. But for now, these three things are what I feel that he does the best. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.